All right, guys, so I'm going to do a little review. What I don't, technology is not working, of course. Somebody just called, interrupted my video. Anyways, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through exam 1. So it's the midterm, EVCC midterm, EVCC 101. And the first question is on Gresham's Law, and I really did need to talk about Gresham's Law, which I don't think I had anything in there about that. Gresham's Law is bad money chases out good. It's the idea that, and if you read, I think I had the fiat money inflation in France available there, and that was a great example of Gresham's Law, and that is when you have two different competing currencies, one is quality, one is not quality, what people tend to do is spend which one? Do you spend the one that holds its value over the long run, or the one that loses value very quickly? So think about that. Put the video on pause if you like. And the obvious answer is, if this is holding its value, I want to keep it. I'm going to store it under the floorboards or whatever. This thing is worth $5 today, $4 tomorrow, $3 the next day. I'm going to get rid of it while it has value, right? And so that's what Gresham's Law is bad money chases out good. You have examples of that in the United States under the bimetallic standard, silver and gold. Officially, silver was overvalued compared to the marketplace, so people would spend silver and they would, what did you say, hoard, quote unquote. They would just hold on to the gold, they would save it. And they would spend the silver in the marketplace, and the government had an official value where they would accept silver. I think it was 15 ounces of silver to the dollar for 1 ounce of gold, but the market said it's 15.5, so people would take their gold, their silver, down to, this is overvalued, they would take it down to the mint, they would trade 15 ounces of silver, get an ounce of gold, go into the marketplace, trade the ounce of gold for 15.5 ounces of silver, take the half ounce of silver, stick it in their pocket, the other 15, they'd go back, get another ounce of gold, right? So because silver was overvalued, it disappeared from the system, or gold was undervalued, right? So silver, they would take it and they would try to get rid of it, but gold was undervalued. So in the fiat money inflation in France, what it was, they had actual metal money, and then they had paper money. And the paper money, they just kept printing it, so they were creating this hyperinflationary scenario. And what happened is you had people would spend the paper money, and they would hold on to that gold money, and they would never spend it. So that's Gresham's Law, right? Bad money chases out good. Sorry, I got a cold here. And the next question, economic growth. Well, that's production. I would talk about some of the basic ideas. We have Adam Smith, remember the invisible hand, right? And that is, everybody seeks their own best interest. Okay, everybody is self-interested. But while you are seeking out your own best interest, you're accidentally, you could say, or tangentially, or by chance, you're actually helping other people. The person goes and opens a coffee shop in the morning. He's trying to make a profit, make his life better, but it just so happens that in doing that, he creates an opportunity for other people to go have breakfast somewhere. So that's the invisible hand, very briefly. Opportunity cost, remember opportunity cost, that is when I choose something, I have to give my next best option up. So if you invest and you put $100 in something and a year later it's worth $100, you say, well, I never really lost anything, right? Well, if you watch the Treasure of the Sierra Madre, at the end of the movie, the guy says, well, I'm not really, so they spent 6 months in the desert and they almost killed each other. It's great movie, it's a great econ pop. And in the end he says, well, and all the gold flies away in the wind. And they have nothing. So he's like, well, I'm all in out is the $500 I spent on materials and supplies. And then the guy's like, what are you talking about? You spent 6 months in the desert with a psycho, with a maniac that he almost killed you. So talk about the 6 months of opportunity cost, right? So very poor economic thinking there by the lunatic, who you can also see how he valued gold. So that's opportunity cost, remember that. Sunk cost, right? Sunk cost should not go into your thinking when you're making decisions, because sunk cost is stuff that's not recoverable. So when he was sitting there, he could have said, yeah, he had an opportunity cost, but he also, when he's making future decisions, he can't think, well, I just spent 6 months in the desert, I really need to go back and make sure that time is worth something. No. He needs to think in terms of opportunity costs, right? Because he can't get those 6 months back. And so he needs to think forward in time. We can talk about supply and demand a little bit, right? So we got our supply and demand curves. We've got the equilibrium here, right? Now what does this mean? What this means, and actually, what the market does is it creates this theoretical equilibrium price, and this is the point where the number of buyers equals the number of sellers, okay? So these are all people selling their products. Now what you see, the points on this curve, these are people that are willing to accept lower prices. These are people that are willing to they're willing to buy at higher prices. But because the market creates this one uniform equilibrium market clearing price, excuse me, all of these people have what's called consumer surplus, producer surplus. These are micro terms, microeconomics. And so what it is this person, he was willing to pay, let's say $5, but the market price is $4. So this person, he was willing to pay $5, but he only had to pay $4, so he saved $1 because of the market. Now, if you could price discriminate, which is just to say charge everybody what you think that they're willing to pay, then the producer, the seller of the items, this person's willing to accept this much, but he's got somebody up here that's going to pay $5, and even though he'll take $3, maybe he could charge the person. You could find out what the person is willing to pay and then charge him that amount. This would be like an auction, right? Where you have bidding, and eventually the person, and by the way, that's the value of prices, right? We talk about what the value of prices are. Well, an auction is a great example of the role prices play in the economy. That is, in an auction, whatever it is tends to go for over its value, but it goes to the person that values it the most. So you've got your classic car. You ever watch the Meacham auctions? They had a GT40, went for 7.125 million, I think. 7,150,000, I think it was. It was just under what the guy wanted for it, but they start at 4, 5, 6. Eventually people that don't value it at 6, they don't bid 6. Person that values it at 7, 8, 9, he bids until everybody else drops out. The people that value it less than him are not willing to pay what he's willing to pay for it. And that's what prices do in the system as a whole, is they send goods and scarce resources to those who value them most, to their highest order use. And what that does is it means companies that, let's take a product like gold. Let's go back to gold. So, I could use gold to wire my house. I think gold is the most efficient electrical conducing element, but it's not practical, right? Because there are better uses, more efficient uses for gold, like plating. You get the earrings, right? Rings, jewelry, using it as investments, all kinds of things. And as far as the electronic use, rather than wiring my whole house and having tens of thousands of dollars in wiring, which is wasteful, I could have spent, a couple $100 in copper. So instead, somebody else was willing to pay the price for the amount of gold that I wanted to wire my house with, and they were going to use it, and they were going to coat high value electronics. Your iPhone has a little gold in it, your smartphone has a little bit of gold in it. It's used for conducting electricity and stuff. So they value it much more than I would. I would never pay the amount they're willing to pay for it, right? But if gold was $1 an ounce, I'd probably wire my whole house with it, right? Be more efficient than copper. But that's, it's not $1 an ounce. Somebody's willing to pay $2, and then somebody's $3, and eventually you get to whatever it is, like $1,400. So supply and demand curves, you know, we went through all that. I'd say if you have any questions on that, you can let me know. Oh, we did talk about price floors. So like a minimum wage, right? Now it's not a big deal if it's down here, but if the price floor is up here, what it does is it creates that surplus. Right, if it's down here, well, so what? The price is higher than the price floor, so it doesn't really have any effect, right? But if it's up here, then it's going to create this surplus because these people were willing to pay. They wanted, you know, the equilibrium's here, and all these people were willing to hire somebody, but because the price is up here, they couldn't. All these people, they come into the marketplace, and what you get is this is the amount that's actually hired, right? And so here you have this big shortage, and even compared to where you were originally, you have a lot less people hired, right? So, and then you could talk about a price ceiling, which is like rent control and stuff. Now, if the ceiling is up here, it's not going to have any effect. It's above the equilibrium price, but if the ceiling is below the equilibrium price, it's going to create a shortage, right? And that's what it does in housing. So New York City has a massive housing shortage because of this. You have this price here, and they also have slumlords and stuff. And you know, I have a kind of a guy I know. He lives in Brooklyn with I think 5 or 6 of his. They're from Haiti, and he's got 6 family members and 7 or 8 in a 3-bedroom apartment. Now imagine you're renting that. You're gonna all the water and the electricity all come with that, and they're paying rent control prices. So the actual landlord told them when they had more people in the apartment that she couldn't afford to pay the water bill and keep it up for them. She asked them to kick in a few bucks for that month at least. And so that's why you get a lot of slumlords, is because if you had an apartment with 10 people living in it and you're not allowed to charge the market price, you're charging like $600 a month, and it costs you $800 to maintain it with the water bill and all that, you know, you're not going to really like that renter very much. You're going to be kind of mad that they're taking advantage of you and they're really leeching off you. So what happens is a lot of people just take those apartments off the market rather than lose money. A lot of other things, the book talks about the other things they do. I had some videos on that, right? So some great stuff, Stossel. Let me move on to the next one. How about It's a Wonderful Life? We have bank runs. Remember, bank runs are when people think the bank is going to run out of money, so they race down to try to get their money back. There's the Wonderful Life had that good example of it. Pretty neat. Inflation is everywhere and always a monetary phenomenon. Inflation is too much money chasing few goods, right?